Hey there, welcome to Bitcoin Wyckoff Technical Analysis session. Last week we talked about Bitcoin being rejected under an invisible resistance, and this week is still within that area. However, it's building up momentum, getting very close to a big swing, so let's see what's going on. Here we're looking at the weekly chart of Bitcoin with these rainbow color key levels. So currently it's still above the purple key level of 104k. That's basically still above the, I'll say, the whole all-time high range. As of this moment, the current weekly candle, if I zoom in, it's like a red cross, and it's basically somewhat like telling us the bulls and the bears are finding an equilibrium at the current point. And this LPSY, last point of supply, may still hold true right now. So I'm keeping this over here, as well as these tags. So previously I mentioned first after distribution, the chance going there, it's around 20%, 80% more towards the downside. So why there are yellow tags and why there are blue tags? If you're new to my session, I have two hypotheses. Basically, one, the blue scenario is more like a basic, straightforward, like treating this as a buying climax back in early March, and an upthrust during November last year, and then finally upthrust after distribution during August. So this happens within this pink box, this upward trend channel box, and the key difference is how we treat the phases of Wyckoff. The yellow ones basically treat these prolonged period of, you can say, consolidation since the last week of February all the way to last week of October last year. So this is an entire preliminary supply period. And then it surged up to this purple key level during December last year. That's the buying climax. In the yellow scenario, obviously we've got the automatic reaction back in April this year. And what we have just seen during the entire month of July all the way to mid-August was only the upthrust. So that's why for the yellow scenario, there's still a chance for an upthrust of the distribution, and that may be where it's heading. For the blue, however, it's probably near the end of the distribution cycle. While the price seems to still trade horizontally at the moment, if it really is the case, then this LPSY will be probably the last peak at this level before the final drop. So that's the key differences between the yellow scenario and the blue scenario. Why am I saying in the title that a big swing, a big price swing is near? So when we look at this, the Bollinger Band and Kotner squeeze, last time the squeeze technically happened was somewhere starting early mid-July all the way till end of October. Those are last year, and then the price swung up all the way to this peak in December. Trade sideways for a while, and then you can say that's an automatic reaction, and then trade a bit sideways, and then it pushes it up again without even getting into the squeeze zone. However, I would consider this is close enough that I usually call a squeeze, even without these shades at the back. That's the definition of the indicator here. For myself, if one side of the purple lines are in the orange, and the other side is close enough, I would consider a squeeze going on already. So now, you see the gap here, right? So the purple was still kind of outside of the orange, pretty clear. Now, one side of the purple, as of today, as of this week, has entered the orange. So if I zoom in, you can see clearer. You see the bottom edge has gone into the orange. The top edge is getting very, very close. There's still 1 day and 20 hours left for this week's candle to close. If next week the candle is still trading within a narrow range, like not going to the other side of the these channels, then it's going to technically trigger the squeeze, much like what happened back in last year. When that happens, it means a bigger price swing will happen, because this is the weekly time frame. Remember, when you look at this indicator, if you look at it from a weekly time frame, the swing will be much larger than if you check it in the daily time frame. So I'll park it here for the time being. I have covered the basically the Wyckoff stages, the Bollinger Band Keltner squeeze. If we have to draw certain candlestick patterns, there's not much going on. If we turn it to the line chart, you see, if I really have to draw lines, it's probably going to be something like an open jaw, right? It's going to just swing even more wild in the coming period. So that's the big picture. So we're expecting a build-up happening. It's basically like you put a mixture in the oven trying to make a cake. That's what exactly is happening now. The mixture is ready. It's just waiting for the time for that ding sound to happen. Now let's get to the daily over here. So the daily chart, let's enlarge it so we can see clearer. Here it has been climbing and climbing and climbing. This, I'll just park it here. Just a question like, is it over yet? Because if we turn it on, it's like a head and shoulder situation. We've got the left shoulder, we've got the head. Is it going to show us the right shoulder and then eventually come down? That can be a possible scenario, right? And if this is really the upthrust back in mid-July, what we had in mid-August was the upthrust of the distribution. That's adding to another point or other indication that we may be near the end of this current distribution cycle in the daily time frame. It isn't too bad if it's really coming down all the way to the sign of weakness level. That's this yellow dashed line over here. That's around 99K 500. Obviously it can go deeper. That's where the previous accumulation cycle was back in, when was it? March this year. So that's a very pessimistic scenario. That's somewhere around 82K. We can't rule that out, however, because that's when it happened since November last year. So if people talk about like money printing, all that, it's going to push the price higher. That may be the case, or maybe it's just the news that's going to drive FOMO, the final FOMO, before the big guys pull the plug. So be very careful if we really have a leg upwards, like I said in the yellow scenario, that it may still do an upthrust to the UTAD level, but don't be too optimistic. My tongue is tied already. So once again, let's check the Bollinger Band Keltner squeeze. In the daily chart, it doesn't seem like it's happening yet, but this can happen quick enough in just a few days. You see the purple lines are getting towards the orange. So if the price is going to trade between these two yellow dashed lines for the coming few days, a squeeze can quickly happen. So by middle or end of next week, the squeeze will happen, and then eventually what happened, like we have seen here back in July, late July, the squeeze happened and then it first swinged, like it first swung down and then swung up. It did not stop right there. It kept swinging bigger. So this time, when the squeeze happened, be prepared for the same kind of behavior. Bullish divergence, interesting question. So that's not something I usually cover, but you can definitely say that, but it's not the scope that I would touch on. And I have mentioned multiple times that we can take reference of those, especially like candlestick patterns, but in some of my videos I raised counter examples, like if we see a certain pattern, sometimes it just doesn't happen that way. It's not 100% of times that it's behaving like the textbook definition. So I'm trying to combine multiple indicators that I find useful, the Wyckoff, the Bollinger Band Curtain Squeeze, as well as these channel boxes. Those are the three that I usually use and I find pretty reliable. So that's why you see me covering those most of the times, while sometimes I'll code certain candlestick pattern and not like theories into it, just to discuss with the community here whether those are trustworthy. So now here, besides these lines, since we're talking about that, if we draw certain lines over here, you see we're getting towards this triangle. You can say that's an ascending triangle. The price is like getting into this zone, and we're only a few days ahead of. So you see this is September 24th, right? What's happening right now, the price has been traveling above this upward trend support line since the beginning of this month, and now it's getting to a point where the price has been declined or rejected by this dashed resistance. That's at 117k. If it continues to trade within this narrow triangle, eventually it has to break out, and there's less than a week's time for it to tell us which side is going to break out. One, to the downside, that's where I said in the beginning, is it like the last point of supply over here? If that's the case, yeah, that's where the scenario is. If it doesn't, if it breaks towards the upside, so it's going to enter this. If I extend this very, very long, it's going to get us to all the way to mid-November, I think, or even late November. Yeah, mid-November, that's not too bad. So if it breaks to the upside, you see is a very big upward wedge over here. So an upward wedge, ascending wedge, in candlestick pattern analysis is a bearish sign, right? So again, I'll leave this as an example here. If it happens like the textbook definition, yeah, that's totally fine. If it doesn't, then we find another example that tells us don't fully trust or follow what the textbook definition says. So again, a lot of people question the methodology as well, because when the analyst charts, basically people will say it's pretty subjective. Like, how do you see there's a pattern? Some people say is this pattern A, the other person said it's pattern B. I agree, it's really subjective, so we may not see the same thing on the same chart, and that's totally fine. And through experience, we'll eventually find out like how to actually measure things. Hey, no worries, rock and roll. So back to here, a couple of interesting observations explained, and the chart gets really busy right now after drawing all these lines. So let me switch off these drawings for the time being. I don't really want to switch off everything, but that's what TradingView is doing if I press that button. So I just want to say this pink box over here, this large pink box. So the line currently is trading somewhere in the middle of the box. So let's see if I make it larger. So it should be able to show in a way that I want to tell you what's going on. So here, it's trading somewhere around the center line of this upward channel box, this pink one. And it's very frequent that things can trade sideways within these kind of larger channels and eventually touches one side of the channel and bounces off, hopefully at least towards the center, if not to the upside. So currently it has been doing this without touching the top edge, the ceiling. So I explained in previous sessions, back in March last year, it touched the ceiling. And September, it touched, well, earlier than September. August, September, both kind of challenged the support. That's the bottom of the box. And then eventually when we get to December last year and also January this year, it challenged 2 times the ceiling of the box. And then we get to the selling climax and the spring, back in the first quarter this year. That's a normal behavior within these channels. So if I switch it to a line chart, it's going to be easy to see. You see this bounce of both edges. This time, we haven't even touched, it's not even close to the top edge of the box. So that's why in my previous sessions, I already explained, it looks to me is a declining momentum going on. So you see it, the curve is kind of flattening when it gets to the peaks, right? If it is really a straight line, it should follow the pink line. But it doesn't, it's kind of deviating right now. So is it signaling like the start of a drop? Maybe it is, right? So there are multiple indications that's showing us something isn't right at the moment if we are expecting a crazy big move for Bitcoin. I'm not sure whether it's the big guys trying to hold for a while before they trigger the final push. If that is, then there are still some happy moments to follow, but if not, if it's really dying down, much like what happened back in November 2021, or even here, well, it's a very long bull run this time we have. We started October 2023 and we're almost October 2025 now. It's 2 years. So from 2022, the starting of the accumulation, to the end of the accumulation, it took roughly a year and a half. We're 2 years in to this distribution cycle. It is much bigger than what we had back in 2021 and 22. If it starts to drop, that's going to be massive. However, it doesn't mean it is going to drop all the way to the last accumulation cycle, because the acceptance of Bitcoin, or the general perception of Bitcoin, has changed pretty huge over the past 4 or 5 years, I would say. So it can drop to a point and then started accumulating at a higher level. That's totally possible. So we keep all the possibilities open and try to see how it eventually unfolds. So these percentages are for our references. Let's see whether it's going to happen that way eventually, because in the weekly time frame, things are going to take longer. I can understand if some of our my audiences are trading daily, or even like they make multiple trades within a week. They may find this analysis too, how to say it, testing their patience too much. Hey, Legolas, thanks for another insight for what your current. Thanks very much for your support and kind words. Yeah, so let's maintain the positivity, but then like the chances are not as high as it is, I would say, based on all these factors combined. But don't forget, the big swing is in the building, and it's going to happen pretty soon. So you see this gathering now, and we're getting into the fourth quarter and things will happen. Thanks for joining me for the Bitcoin session today.